It is a cruel joke. Really, when the person you have loved for years can only love you in the shadows. And the crueler part? I let him. I let him bury me in secrecy, tuck me away like a guilty confession, because I thought that was what love was supposed to look like. America has no shortage of broken love stories, but mine began on the football field, the most public place imaginable, and yet, ironically, it became the backdrop to my most hidden life. For 3 years, I was nothing more than a whisper behind the brilliance of Coach Ryder Hale. To the world, he was a legend. The youngest head coach to lead a Division I college team to consecutive championships. All grit and glory, charisma dripping with every sideline command. To me, he was the man who pressed me against locker room walls after practice. The man whose lips bruised mine in hotel rooms during away games. The man who swore he loved me, but could never be seen holding my hand in daylight. And I, stupidly, let him. I was 21 when it started, too young, too eager, too flattered that someone like him, powerful and untouchable, wanted me. Ryder was 10 years older, a man who had already built his empire while I was still figuring out if I even wanted to play football after college. He was magnetic, terrifying, impossible to resist. He taught me plays on the field by day and destroyed me in his sheets by night. I used to think I was the lucky one. Now, looking back, I know better. 3 years passed like that. 3 years of being invisible at his press conferences, of leaving restaurants first so we wouldn't be spotted, of pretending not to know the warmth of his hands in the dark. 3 years of waiting, hoping, foolishly believing he would one day choose me over the career that demanded his silence. But every time I thought he was close to saying it'o, choosing me, he retreated. Always the same excuses: the media, the fans, the team, his reputation. Until one night I broke. That night was cold, the kind of November chill that bites through coats. We had just won another game, the locker room buzzing with celebration, and I watched him bask in the glory, cameras flashing around him like he was carved out of gold. He caught my eye for half a second, just one fleeting second, and smiled. The kind of smile no one else would have noticed, but I did. It was the same smile he gave me when we were alone, the one that had once melted me. But that night, it didn't feel like love. It felt like a knife. I slipped out before the champagne bottles popped, before the noise became too much. I went back to his apartment, the one place where I was allowed to exist, and waited. When he came home hours later, flushed with victory, I was sitting on his couch, hands clenched, heart breaking. "You didn't wait for me," he said, tossing his jacket aside like I was just another piece of furniture. "I can't do this anymore," I told him. My voice was steady, but my chest was shaking. He froze. Ryder Hale never froze in the field. Off the field, he was decisive, commanding. But in that moment, he looked like a man cornered. "Don't," he said softly. "Don't say that. I gave you 3 years," I whispered. 3 years of hiding, 3 years of pretending. I can't keep being your shadow, Ryder. I want more. I deserve more. His jaw clenched, his eyes dark. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, in a voice rougher than I'd ever heard, he said, "If you walk away now, you'll ruin me." That was it. Not "I love you," not "please stay." Just the truth I had always known. I was never his choice. I was his secret. So I left. That was 6 months ago. 6 months of learning how to breathe again, how to live without constantly checking my phone for his name. I moved to New York, enrolled in graduate school, found a part-time job at a coffee shop. Small things, ordinary things, things that were mine finally and not tied to him. But life is a cruel storyteller, because last week he showed up. I was closing the cafe, dragging mop water across the floor, when I heard the bell over the door. I looked up and there he was. Ryder Hale, larger than life in a room too small to contain him, standing under the dim lights like he owned the place. For a moment, my heart betrayed me. It raced. My hands trembled. 3 years of love don't just vanish, no matter how much pain they left behind. "Eli," he said, my name breaking off his tongue like a confession. I gripped the mop tighter. "You shouldn't be here. I had to see you." "Why?" I demanded. "So you can remind me of everything I'm not? Or because no one else lets you kiss them when the world isn't watching?" He flinched. Ryder Hale, the man who never faltered on the field, flinched. "I left the team," he said finally. His voice was low, stripped of its usual authority. "I resigned. The mop clattered to the floor. What? I couldn't do it anymore, he said. Not without you. For the first time in years, I didn't know what to say. The silence between us stretched, heavy and unbearable, as if the air itself had grown too thick to breathe. I stared at him, at Ryder Hale, this man who had once been everything to me, who had ripped me open and left me bleeding, and now he was standing in my cafe with words I never thought I'd hear. You resigned. I finally managed to say, my voice cracking with disbelief. He nodded, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked small, vulnerable. His shoulders, usually squared and broad like he carried the weight of a team on them, were slumped. His eyes, those sharp, commanding eyes that could make grown men obey without question, were tired, worn, almost pleading. I couldn't keep pretending, he said quietly. Every game, every press conference, every time I saw you and couldn't touch you a lie, it was killing me. And when you left, it felt like the air went with you. I thought I could live with the lie, but I couldn't. I won the trophies, I got the glory, but none of it mattered. Not without you. My throat tightened. God, how many nights had I dreamed of hearing him say something like that? How many nights had I prayed he would finally choose me? But standing here now, with the memory of 3 years of secrecy still clinging to my skin, I couldn't just fall back into his arms. Love didn't erase the scars. You don't get to show up here and say that, I snapped, though my voice trembled with the war inside me. You don't get to disappear behind your career for years, and then walk back into my life like nothing happened. His jaw tightened. It wasn't nothing. It was everything. You were everything. I was just too much of a coward to admit it. The word coward hit me harder than I expected. Ryder Hale never called himself that. But maybe for once he was telling the truth. I picked up the mop again, not because I needed to, but because I needed something to hold on to, something to keep me grounded. I spent 3 years waiting for you to be brave, I said softly. 3 years hoping. Do you know what that does to a person? To always come second? To always be the secret? I know, he whispered, and I hate myself for it. For a moment, the cafe was silent except for the hum of the fridge in the corner. His presence filled the room, and yet there was a distance between us wider than the football fields where this all began. Finally, I asked, why now? Because I finally realized I can't win anything worth keeping if I don't win you back, he said. His voice was rough, raw, like each word scraped against his throat. I resigned because I want to live for myself now, and that means living with you if you'll let me. The words should have broken me open, but instead they left me frozen. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But love, I'd learned, was not just words. Love was action. And for 3 years, his actions had been silence, shadows, and closed doors. Ryder, I said finally, I don't know if I can do this again. His face fell, like I had just punched him in the gut. But he didn't move closer, didn't reach for me like he once would have. Maybe he'd finally learned I wasn't his to claim anymore. Then let me prove it to you, he said after a long pause. Don't forgive me tonight. Don't take me back tonight. But let me show you that I can be the man you deserve. Just don't shut the door on me forever. I wanted to laugh, bitter and hollow, but instead all I could do was whisper, I don't trust you. Then let me earn it, he replied. And for the first time in years, Ryder Hale didn't look like a legend. He just looked like a man. The days that followed were strange. He didn't disappear this time. He came back to the cafe every morning, sometimes ordering coffee he barely touched, sometimes just sitting in the corner, silent, watching me work. He never pushed, never tried to corner me into a conversation. He just showed up. It was infuriating and confusing, and, if I was honest with myself, it was breaking down walls I thought I had fortified. One morning, after a week of his persistent appearances, I finally snapped. You can't just keep sitting here, I said, slamming his latte down on the table. It's creepy. He looked up at me with a calm I didn't expect. Then talk to me, he said simply. I opened my mouth, ready to lash out, but the words caught. Maybe because his eyes weren't commanding me this time. They were asking, so I sat down. Why me? I asked, folding my arms tightly. You could have had anyone. You probably did have anyone. Why me? He leaned forward, his hands clasped together like he was praying. Because you saw me. Not the coach. Not the headlines. Me. You knew when I was lying, when I was scared, when I was hurting. You made me feel like a man, not an image. And I didn't know how to live without that once I had it. My chest ached. Damn him. And yet you chose the image over me. I shot back. His eyes softened. I know. And I'll spend however long it takes proving to you that I won't make that mistake again. I wanted to tell him to stop, to leave me alone, to let me heal in peace. But the truth was, part of me didn't want him to. One evening, as the cafe was closing, he offered to walk me home. I almost said no, but the city was cold, and the thought of walking alone felt heavier than usual. So I let him. We walked in silence for a while, the crunch of our footsteps on the pavement the only sound. Then, quietly, he said, "Do you ever think about those nights?" I knew exactly which nights he meant. The ones in hotel rooms, in dark apartments, in stolen moments that had felt like the only real thing in the world. Yes, I admitted, my voice low, but I try not to. He glanced at me, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. They were real to me. I stopped walking. Then why wasn't I? He froze. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, almost brokenly, he whispered, "Because I didn't know how to be brave." There it was again, the cowardice. But maybe also the truth. I exhaled, long and shaky, and began walking again. "If you want a second chance, Ryder, it won't be easy. I'm not the same person I was. And I won't settle for shadows again." His voice was steady, firm. "I wouldn't ask you to." That night, lying awake in my small apartment, I thought about him. About the way he had looked at men with possession, but with fear of losing me. About the way he had shown up, day after day, without demanding anything. Maybe, just maybe, he was changing. But the question was, could I risk my heart again? The city seemed louder the next week, though maybe it was just me. Every honking horn, every barking dog, every chatter from strangers walking past the cafe reminded me that Ryder and I were no longer hidden in some private bubble. He was out here now, in my world, exposed, vulnerable. And if anyone noticed who he was, the Ryder Halath'd wonder why he was sitting every morning in a dingy cafe instead of on the sidelines where he belonged. But he didn't care. At least, that's what he said. "I don't care what they say about me anymore," he told me one morning as he stirred a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. His hand was shaking slightly. "All I care about is whether you'll let me in." I wanted to tell him he was lying, that a man who lived off the roar of stadiums could never stop caring what people thought. But then I remembered the hollow look in his eyes the night he told me he resigned, the cracks in the perfect armor he'd worn for years. Maybe he was telling the truth. Still, I didn't make it easy. "Do you know what they'll do to you if this comes out?" I asked, folding my arms across my chest. "You've spent your whole career building this spotless image. The press will eat you alive. The fans will turn. You'll lose everything." He met my gaze, steady, unwavering. "I already lost everything when I lost you." The words dug deep, but I wasn't ready to bleed for him again. Not yet. It wasn't long before the outside world began to catch on. Fame is a strange beast. It follows you even when you try to bury it. A student from campus recognized him at the cafe one afternoon and posted a photo online. Coach Hale spotted in some random coffee shop in New York. Why's he here and not coaching? By evening, it was everywhere. Social media flooded with speculation. Did he get fired? Did he quit for another team? Is he sick? What's he hiding? The irony wasn't lost on me. For years, I had been the hidden part of his life. Now, for the first time, Ryder was the one under a microscope. That night, he showed up at my apartment door. I hesitated before letting him in, but the look on his face, tired, desperate, softened me enough to step aside. "They won't stop until they know why," he said, pacing the small living room like a caged lion. "Reporters called my brother. They staked out my old apartment. They're circling like vultures." "Then tell them the truth," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. He froze. His eyes met mine, wide, almost frightened. "Eli, you said you resigned for me," I pressed. "You said you don't care what people think anymore. Prove it. Tell them the truth." His chest rose and fell rapidly. For a man who had stared down national championships, he suddenly looked terrified. "You don't understand," he whispered. "It's not just my career. It's my family, my reputation. the sponsors. Your excuses sound the same as they did 3 years ago. I cut in. The words stung him, I could tell. But they stung me more, because deep down, I wanted him to fight for me, not retreat into fear. I can't go back to that life, I said, my voice breaking. I can't go back to being your secret, Ryder. If you want me, if you really want me, you have to choose me in the daylight. The silence that followed was deafening. His hands trembled as he raked them through his hair. Finally, he whispered, I'm scared. I took a step closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. So am I. But I'm more scared of loving you in the dark again. For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. Ryder Hale, the untouchable, unbreakable coach, was breaking in front of me. Then I'll do it, he said hoarsely. I'll tell them. I'll tell the world. Just don't let me lose you again. 2 days later, he called a press conference. The sports world went wild. Speculation ran rampant, everything from health issues to scandals to contract disputes. The cafe's old TV buzzed with news anchors replaying the announcement, reporters crowding outside the venue. And I, against my better judgment, was there too. Hidden in the back row of the small hall, hood pulled low over my face, heart pounding like a drum. When Ryder stepped up to the podium, the room erupted in flashes and questions. He raised his hand for silence, and when the noise finally died, he gripped the microphone like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I know you've all been wondering why I resigned, he began, his voice steady but heavy with something raw. The truth is that I couldn't keep living a lie. For years, I hid a part of myself because I was afraid of what it would cost me. But in the process, I lost the one person who mattered most. And I refused to keep hiding anymore. The room went still. My chest clenched as he continued. I am in love with someone, he said, his voice stronger now, bolder. A man. And for 3 years, I asked him to stay in the shadows with me. I hurt him. I failed him. But he deserves to be loved in the daylight. So this is me, choosing him no matter what it costs. The silence was deafening, broken only by the rapid-fire clicks of cameras. A reporter shouted, Who is he? What's his name? Ryder's eyes scanned the crowd. For a terrifying moment, I thought he might expose me right then. But instead, his gaze softened, almost like a secret smile. I won't give you his name, he said firmly. Not until he wants me to. But I will tell you this, the reason I'm standing here, finally honest with myself. And if that makes me lose everything else, so be it. He's worth it. My vision blurred as tears welled in my eyes. For the first time in 3 years, Ryder Hale chose me. Not in whispers, not in shadows, but in the blinding light of day. That night, he came to my apartment again. I opened the door before he could knock, and before I could speak, he pulled me into his arms. His embrace was fierce, desperate, like he was holding on to his very life. They'll come after you now, I murmured against his chest. Let them, he whispered into my hair. As long as I have you, they can take the rest. And maybe, just maybe, for the first time I believed him. The days after the press conference were chaos. Reporters camped outside the cafe, their cameras flashing at every customer who walked through the door. Online forums exploded with debates, half of them cheering Ryder for his courage, the other half calling him every cruel name imaginable. For me, it was overwhelming. Suddenly, I was no longer invisible. Even though Ryder had protected my name, speculation spread quickly, with strangers online dissecting every man he'd ever stood next to. The weight of it pressed on my chest until breathing felt like a task. One night, I sat on the fire escape outside my apartment, the city buzzing beneath me. Ryder came out after me, carrying 2 mugs of tea. He handed me one, then sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. Do you regret it? I asked quietly, his head turned toward me. Regret what? Coming out like that, choosing me. He didn't hesitate. Never. I only regret not doing it sooner. I stared at him, at the man who had once hidden me in shadows and was now braving the storm with me. For the first time, I believed he meant it. Still, rebuilding trust wasn't instant. Love wasn't a switch you flipped back and it was a bridge, rebuilt plank by plank, until one day you looked down and realized the gap wasn't there anymore. Ryder showed up for me in ways he never had before. He walked me to work even when cameras followed us. He stayed up late while I studied, bringing me snacks and scribbling plays in a notebook just to keep himself busy. He held my hand in public, his grip firm and unflinching no matter how many eyes stared. But more than that, he listened. One night, after a particularly brutal article painted him as a fallen hero, I broke. "They're tearing you apart because of me?" I whispered, tears spilling down my cheeks. "You gave up everything, and now you're being crucified." He cupped my face, his thumbs brushing away the tears. "Eli, listen to me. I didn't give up everything. I gave up lies, and what I got back was you. That's not a loss, it's the first real win of my life." The conviction in his voice melted something inside me. For 3 years I had been his secret. Now I was his anchor. The healing wasn't just between us, it was within me, too. For so long, I had defined myself by what I was to Ryder. His secret, his shadow, his forbidden love. But in New York, in graduate school, in the cafe, I was building a life that was mine. And Ryder didn't just respect the supported it. He came to my presentations, sitting quietly in the back, pride shining in his eyes. He helped me with late-night research, reading articles aloud until I fell asleep on the couch. He celebrated my victories as if they were his own. And slowly, the fear began to fade. Months passed. The noise of the scandal softened, as all news eventually does. Ryder wasn't the headline anymore, though whispers followed him. He didn't return to coaching, at least not yet. Instead, he started volunteering at a community center, working with kids who dreamed of football but didn't have the means. Watching him with them, patient and kind, reminded me of why I had fallen in love with him in the first place. One evening, after a long day, we sat together on the roof of my building, the city skyline glowing like a galaxy. Ryder leaned back, his arm draped around my shoulders. "Do you ever think about the future?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "All the time. Just not the same way I used to." "What do you mean?" "Back then, the future was this dream where you'd finally choose me, where we could walk down the street and not pretend we were strangers. Now," I looked at him, at the man beside me, solid and real. "Now the future feels like something we're already living." He pressed a kiss to my temple, soft and lingering. I liked the sound of that. The turning point came on a warm spring afternoon. Ryder had spent the day helping at the community center, and I had finished a big presentation at school. We decided to meet at the park, away from the noise of the city. As we walked beneath the blooming trees, Ryder suddenly stopped. He turned to me, his expression uncharacteristically nervous. "Eli," he began, reaching into his pocket. My heart skipped. He pulled out a small box. My breath caught. "I don't have a team anymore," he said, his voice low but steady. "I don't have the glory or the titles or the spotlight, but I have you, and that's more than I ever deserved. These past months, you've taught me what it means to live honestly, to love honestly. I don't ever want to go back to the man I was before." He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring, nothing flashy, nothing grand, just honest. "So, Eli," he said, his eyes locking on mine, vulnerable and raw, "will you marry me?" For a moment, the world stopped. The years of secrecy, the pain, the longing, they all rushed through me like a flood. And then, like the tide pulling back, there was only clarity. "Yes?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Yes, Ryder. 1,000 times, yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger, his hands trembling, and then he kissed me right there in the park, in the daylight, in front of whoever might be watching. And for once, I didn't care. Neither did he. The months that followed were not a fairy tale. People still judged. The press still whispered. But we had each other, and that was enough. Our wedding was small, intimate, just close friends, a few family members, and the kids from the community center who cheered louder than anyone else. As we stood together, exchanging vows, I realized something. Love had broken me once, but it had also rebuilt me, stronger, braver, whole. When Ryder slipped the ring onto my finger a second time, this time in front of witnesses, I knew the shadows were gone for good. I wasn't his secret anymore. I was his future. And in that moment, standing hand in hand with the man who had once hidden me, I finally believed the truth. We had both learned to live for ourselves, but somehow, in the process, we had found each other again. And this time, we weren't letting go. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, Please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.